We will be examining the role given to Native Americans in mainstream media, as well as the political representation they have from a local to national level.
Image. Oh, the Redskins.
This is a dictionary-defined racial slur.
Literally painted him red.
We have eagle feathers on here, and those are very sacred to a lot of tribes.
I can't imagine any other race where that would be considered acceptable. Having a team named after a racial slur.
People say, yeah, but we have such a strong history with the Washington Redskins. We kind of have a history too.
Historically speaking, American mainstream media has misrepresented Native Americans. In these clips, you will not only see how the media tends to rely on stereotypes to portray Native Americans, but you will also see the rise of cultural appropriation in pop culture.
The skins are hellish red. They're only good when dead. They're vermin, as I said, and worse. They're savages, savages. Barely even human.
Guys. Great Spirit.
Yes, little bear.
Tell me about the Onondaga God. Are we always the Great Spirit?
In the news, there's been a lot of controversy regarding certain mascots that football teams have used, such as the Washington Redskins. These mascots have an incorrect way of representing Native Americans. For example, the mascots are either completely naked or have a weapon with them, which is harmful because that is how society has come to perceive them as a whole. A team should not see an ethnic group as a mascot. It makes many young Native Americans feel like that representation is better than none, making them question not only who they are, but if they are important enough.
How do you think Native Americans are represented in the media and in politics?
Native Americans are represented poorly within the media. Our representation in politics are constantly overlooked. We are quite active within the government. If you take a look into a few programs interested in the success of Native American communities, such as National Congress of American Indians, National Indian Child Welfare Association, National Indian Health Board, National American Indian Housing Council, National Indian Child Welfare Association, and USDA.
How do you think the portrayal of Native Americans in the media affects the perception of the audience?
The portrayal of Native Americans in the media affects the perception of the audience as well as the next generation of Native American youth. They face the stereotyping, and it holds them back from this initiative to set forth specific recommendations to improve the social, emotional, mental, physical, and economic health of children and youth and preventing them from achieving their learning and developmental potential.
What factors do you think contribute to the lack of representation of Native Americans in politics and in the media?
Constant themes and the lack of representation of Native Americans misinform public because Native Americans are very active. Native American voter turnout is one of the highest in the country, but are targeted with voter difficulties such as rural areas, not enough voting machines, and no proper forms of identification. Native Americans are highly represented in our sovereign nations with strong tribal governments, housing authorities, and health programs.
One of the issues with the representation of Native Americans is the difficulty in measuring who fits into this group. Each tribe has their own standard on who they consider Native American. For example, some groups consider someone who is 1/2 tribal heritage the cutoff, while for others it is 1/8. Along with the inability to come to a clear understanding of who is Native American, acts from the U.S. government to make Native Americans assimilate into white culture have caused many to either deny or never even know their true heritage. This is important to acknowledge because there may be more representatives who are Native American, but we simply do not know. The representation of Native Americans at the national level is close to none at all. From 1960 to 2000, there were only 2 members in U.S. Congress of Native American heritage, and there have been only a few to serve in the cabinet and other higher levels of the judiciary system. Although we must take into account the possibility that some members may not know or acknowledge their heritage, this number is still an abysmal rate. Despite how low these numbers are, Native Americans have shown that their inclination to government involvement lies more at the local or state level. This is most likely because of the creation of the reservation system, a system which consists of concentrated areas for Native American populations in small regions. These reservations often include at least one county, which makes their population the majority for local as well as state elections. Native Americans are often represented in a poor, stereotypical way, if they are represented at all. Through education, there is hope for changing the negative perception they are assigned and to stop the erasure of this group.